She stood frozen in the office bathroom, staring at a message on her phone that shattered her world. Her partner had cheated. Her hands trembled, until her boss stepped in quietly and whispered, "You deserve better." That moment didn't just comfort her, it transformed her. Heartbreak is one of those experiences that rarely sends a warning. It doesn't knock politely or give you time to prepare. It arrives abruptly, often at the most inconvenient, ordinary, and unremarkable moments when life seems stable, routines feel familiar, and the people you trust appear dependable. And that's exactly what makes heartbreak so devastating. It enters like a storm on a clear day, tearing through the illusion of security you've built without giving you a single second to brace yourself. She was sitting at her desk that afternoon just like she had on hundreds of other days. Her coffee mug rested by her keyboard, her inbox full of tasks, her mind on a deadline. Nothing about the moment hinted at the emotional collapse that was about to happen. Life looked normal, life felt predictable, and in that predictable moment, she thought her relationship was predictable too, steady, loyal, committed. But heartbreak does not care about timing. It does not wait for you to be emotionally ready or physically alone. It does not respect the boundaries of personal and professional life. With one unexpected message, a screenshot sent by a friend, a confession whispered through text, evidence she never asked to see, her entire emotional world shifted. She froze, her hands grew cold. Her heart pounded in her chest so loudly she thought someone might hear it. It was as though reality had suddenly changed shape around her. Something that felt safe just minutes earlier now felt foreign and threatening. And that is the nature of heartbreak. It is abrupt, it is intrusive, it interrupts your life without apology. One moment you are functioning, thinking rationally, breathing normally. The next moment you are fighting to process a truth that contradicts everything you believed. The shift is so sudden that your mind struggles to catch up, as if it refuses to accept that life has just taken a sharp, painful turn. She had no preparation, no signs, no chance to intervene before the betrayal happened. And that's how heartbreak often operates, silently, secretly, until the truth emerges in a single explosive moment. In that moment, her sense of identity shook. Because heartbreak isn't just about losing a person, it's about losing the future you imagined with them. It's the collision of certainty with doubt, of dreams with disappointment. It's the dismantling of trust that once held your emotions upright like a pillar. And what made it even harder was where she was when she discovered the betrayal. She wasn't at home where she could collapse into tears. She wasn't surrounded by family or close friends where she could find comfort or express rage. She was at work in an environment where she was supposed to stay composed, professional, focused. Heartbreak doesn't choose its stage. It doesn't choose the moment when you're emotionally equipped to deal with it. It chooses the moment that disrupts your stability the most. Her immediate reaction was to hide, to preserve her dignity, to pretend she was fine when everything inside her felt shattered. She excused herself to the restroom not to fix her makeup or adjust her hair, but to breathe, to gather the little strength she had left, to stop the tears threatening to fall. The bathroom mirror reflected not just her face, but her loss, her confusion, her disbelief. That's one of the cruelest parts of sudden heartbreak. It forces you into emotional isolation at the worst possible moment. You feel alone even when you're surrounded by people. You feel misunderstood even when no one has said a word. You feel vulnerable in a world that demands your strength. And she felt all of it compressed into one moment that forced her to face a truth she wasn't prepared for. Heartbreak's unexpected nature also makes it confusing. You question everything. How long has this been happening? Why didn't I see it? What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? Even though the betrayal is someone else's choice, the pain often convinces you to examine yourself first. That self-blame becomes a secondary wound almost as deep as the betrayal itself. But this sudden heartbreak is not just emotionally painful, it's physically disorienting. Her breath became shallow, her vision blurred, her thoughts raced uncontrollably. Emotional shock often manifests like this. The body does not distinguish emotional danger from physical danger. It goes into survival mode. And in survival mode, clarity disappears, replaced by instinct, panic, and disbelief. The most heartbreaking part: she walked into the office that morning believing her life was intact. She had no idea that before noon it would be split into a before and an after. A before she remembered fondly, and an after she never saw coming. This is the essence of unexpected heartbreak. It reminds us how fragile life can be, how temporary stability sometimes is, and how quickly the people we trust can change the story we thought we were living. It does not wait for a convenient time. It does not spare you because you're busy, focused, or hopeful. It simply arrives, rewriting everything in a moment you never imagined would hold so much pain. One of the most remarkable truths about human beings is how deeply we can suffer without letting the world see a single crack. People hide their pain not because they're dishonest, but because they're afraid of judgment, of vulnerability, of appearing weak, or of becoming someone else's burden. And when heartbreak strikes, especially the kind that arrives suddenly and violently, the instinct to hide becomes even stronger. She was no different. When the message appeared on her screen, the message that confirmed her partner's betrayal, her heart didn't just break, it collapsed. Her breath hitched, her vision blurred, and 1,000 emotions flooded her all at once. But what did she do? She didn't scream. She didn't confide in someone. She didn't crumble publicly. Instead, she swallowed her pain like poison, allowing it to burn silently inside her. It wasn't that she didn't need support. It wasn't that she didn't feel devastated. It was simply that she believed she had to hold herself together. Society teaches us this from a young age. Be strong, be composed. Don't let personal emotions disrupt your responsibilities. So what do? We become experts at hiding. People hide their pain because showing it feels dangerous. Pain exposes your softest parts. It reveals the truth behind your smile, and she couldn't risk that, not in a place where she was expected to be confident, competent, and in control. The office bathroom became her hiding place. The stall door, the only thin boundary between her and a world that expected her to be okay. She locked it, sat down, and finally let the tears fall, but just for a moment. A few seconds to release the pressure before she wiped her face, adjusted her posture, and forced herself back into the world with a mask she hoped wouldn't crack. This is what many people do. They compartmentalize their heartbreak, stuffing it into a corner of their chest where they hope no one will notice. They carry the weight quietly, convincing themselves that silence is strength. But silence is not strength, it is survival. And survival is what she was trying to do. Pain becomes even easier to hide when life demands our attention. She had deadlines. She had coworkers. She had a boss. She had a reputation for being reliable and steady. In moments like these, the fear of letting others down becomes stronger than the need to care for yourself. So she suppressed her devastation and attempted to function, even though her mind was drifting, her emotions were drowning, and her heart felt unbearably heavy. But the truth is, hidden pain doesn't disappear. It leaks through the cracks. Her smile was slightly delayed, her laugh slightly forced, her eyes slightly dimmer, and though most people wouldn't notice these tiny shifts, they were monumental for someone going through heartbreak. The effort it takes to appear normal when your world has collapsed is exhausting. It is like trying to stand still in a storm, pretending the wind isn't tearing at your clothes. People hide their pain because being vulnerable in front of others feels like giving them the power to judge, to pity, or to misunderstand. Vulnerability requires trust, and trust is the very thing betrayal shatters. That day, she didn't feel brave enough to fall apart in front of anyone. She was trying to protect herself from questions she couldn't answer, from sympathy she wasn't ready to receive, from eyes that might see the truth she didn't want to admit. But the more people hide their pain, the heavier it becomes. Every suppressed tear becomes a burden. Every forced smile becomes a lie you tell yourself. You start pretending so well that even you begin to wonder whether your sadness is real or just inconvenience. And yet, beneath the surface, the pain pulses like a heartbeat, constant, aching, undeniable. She wasn't just hiding heartbreak. She was hiding the fear that came with it. Fear of being alone, fear of being unworthy, fear of being judged for staying or for leaving, fear of never being able to trust again. These fears rarely show on the surface, but they sit heavy in the chest, making every breath feel like effort. And this is what many people don't realize. The strongest individuals are often the best at hiding pain. They are the ones who shoulder the most, who keep smiling through the storm, who keep working despite the chaos in their hearts. They've spent years training themselves to push through, to prioritize others, to be dependable even when they themselves are breaking. But hidden pain is still pain. Silent suffering is still suffering. And being able to hide it does not mean you deserve to carry it alone. She walked out of that bathroom believing she had succeeded in hiding her heartbreak. But pain has a way of radiating through even the strongest walls. It shows in the tension of the shoulders, the tremble of the voice, the distant look in the eyes. And someone noticed someone who wasn't fooled by her mask of composure. But that moment comes later. For now, what matters is this undeniable truth. People hide their pain because it's the only way they know how to survive in a world that expects them to stay whole, even when they're quietly falling apart. Leadership is often misunderstood as a position of authority, a title printed on a business card, or a role outlined in a company's hierarchy. But true leadership is something far deeper, something rooted in awareness, empathy, and the ability to see beyond the surface. A true leader is someone who recognizes the human being behind the job title, who understands that performance is shaped by emotions, experiences, and the quiet battles that people fight every day. Her boss embodied this perfectly. Most managers see only results, deadlines met, reports submitted, tasks completed. They track progress, evaluate output, and base their judgments on what is visible and measurable. But people's lives cannot be measured in spreadsheets. Their struggles don't show up on performance charts. Their heartbreaks don't appear in quarterly reports. A true leader knows this. Her boss noticed something that others might have overlooked, a slight change in her demeanor. The way she avoided eye contact, the stiffness in her shoulders as she walked back from the bathroom, the faint redness around her eyes, quickly covered with makeup but not hidden well enough. These tiny indicators, invisible to most, were loud signals to someone who cared. And that's what made her boss more than just a supervisor. She was observant, she was present, she was human. True leaders understand that people don't leave their emotions at the door when they arrive at work. They carry their joys, fears, hopes, and heartbreaks with them. And when something heavy is weighing them down, it affects everything: focus, confidence, decision making, creativity, energy. But instead of criticizing or ignoring this, a true leader chooses to lean in, not turn away. Her boss didn't confront her publicly, didn't demand an explanation, didn't interrupt her tasks with cold questions. Instead, she approached with quiet presence, giving her space but not letting her drown in silence. She chose compassion over curiosity, care over control. Many people think leadership is about directing others, but real leadership is about seeing them. Seeing when someone is struggling, even if they say they're fine. Seeing when someone needs support, even if they don't ask. Seeing when someone is trying to hold themselves together, even as they fall apart inside. Her boss didn't need details. She didn't need to know the whole story. She could sense the heaviness, and she responded not as a manager protecting company productivity, but as a human being protecting another human being's emotional well-being. This is what sets true leaders apart. They care about the person more than the output. Her boss understood something essential. When an employee is going through emotional trauma, the solution isn't discipline, it's compassion. It's recognizing that the person in front of you is more than their role. She is a daughter, a friend, maybe a sister, a partner, a human carrying memories and wounds that don't simply disappear at the office entrance. And that day, her wound was fresh, so fresh it was still bleeding inside her. But the world would never know that because she tried so hard to hide it. Many managers would have let her continue pretending, perhaps even criticized her for being distracted or less engaged, but not her boss. Her boss stepped into the gap between appearance and reality, the space where pain hides, and acknowledged her humanity. True leadership requires emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence begins with awareness. Her boss had it. She understood that what she was seeing wasn't laziness, incompetence, or lack of dedication. It was pain, deep, raw, disorienting pain, and instead of demanding more work, she offered support. She didn't overwhelm her with questions. She didn't pry or invade her privacy. Instead, she offered something far more powerful: presence, a silent, steady signal that said, "I see you. I understand something is wrong. You are not alone." And when she finally spoke with a whisper instead of authority, her words revealed the kind of leadership the world needs more of. You deserve better. Those words didn't come from a manager fulfilling a duty. They came from a leader offering truth. They came from someone who refused to let her suffer quietly in the shadows. They came from someone who recognized that emotional wounds deserve acknowledgement just as much as professional achievements do. True leaders know when to step forward and when to step back. They know when to guide and when to simply support. They understand that leadership is not about controlling outcomes but uplifting people. And sometimes, uplifting someone means giving them a moment of validation during their deepest hurt. Her boss didn't just see her as an employee. She saw her as a person, and that changed everything. Because the simple act of noticing someone's pain can be the difference between them breaking down entirely and finding the strength to continue. It can be the difference between isolation and reassurance. It can be the difference between feeling worthless and remembering one's value. Leadership is not about managing people, it is about caring for them. And in that moment of compassion, her boss proved what true leadership really looks like. Sometimes the most powerful turning points in life don't come from grand speeches, dramatic events, or long conversations. Sometimes they come from a single sentence, a quiet, gentle phrase spoken at exactly the right moment. A phrase that lands not on the ears, but directly on the heart. And that is what happened when her boss whispered those 3 simple words: "You deserve better." To an outsider, it might seem insignificant. Just a short phrase, just a small sentence, just a few words spoken in passing. But words carry weight, and these words carried enough weight to shift the emotional gravity of her entire world. When she heard them, she was still drowning in disbelief. Her mind kept looping the betrayal, her emotions were tangled. She wasn't thinking clearly, she was thinking painfully. In moments of heartbreak, the mind becomes a battlefield of questions. Why did this happen? Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? How do I move forward? These thoughts don't gently appear, they attack, they undermine, they erode confidence, they crush self-worth, and that is exactly why this simple phrase mattered. You deserve better did not erase the pain. It did not solve the problem, but it interrupted the destruction happening inside her. In 3 words, her boss reminded her of something she could not remind herself of in that moment: her value. Heartbreak has a way of shrinking a person. It makes them question everything they're worth, their importance, their desirability, their judgment. It makes them feel replaceable and unloved. When someone is cheated on, the emotional wound goes beyond betrayal. It cuts into identity. It whispers lies like, "You weren't good enough, you weren't worth loyalty, you didn't deserve honesty." These internal lies are powerful because they attach themselves to the rawest parts of the heart. And in her vulnerable state, she was absorbing all of them. She was in a place where she could hardly breathe, let alone believe in herself. Then came the whisper, not a dramatic speech, not a loud declaration. Just a quiet, intentional, compassionate whisper. You deserve better. It was the emotional lifeline she didn't know she needed. It was validation, a reminder that the betrayal she endured wasn't her fault, that her pain was justified, and that her worth was not measured by someone else's failure. Simple phrases are powerful because they penetrate the fog that heartbreak creates. They cut through the noise. They become anchors when everything feels unsteady. Her boss didn't tell her what to do. She didn't give advice. She didn't pry. Instead, she offered truth, clean, unfiltered, supportive truth. And that truth sparked the beginning of transformation. Because transformation almost always begins with a shift in belief. A shift from I'm broken to I'll heal. A shift from I'm not enough to someone out there sees value in me. A shift from I have to settle to I deserve more. These mental shifts don't require complex explanations. They don't require long conversations. They require the right words, delivered with sincerity, at a moment when the heart is open enough or desperate enough to receive them. Her boss saw that her pain wasn't just about losing a relationship. It was about losing the belief that she was worthy of respect. When someone we trust betrays us, the most dangerous part is not the loss of the person, it's the loss of our sense of worth. It's the emotional damage that echoes long after the initial shock. And that is why these 3 words had so much power. You deserve better. They challenged the silent lies that heartbreak had planted. They challenged the guilt she felt. They challenged the idea that the betrayal reflected her worth, and slowly, quietly, something inside her shifted. She stood a little straighter. She breathed a little deeper. She softened, just enough to let a sliver of strength in. And strength is all she needed to begin rebuilding. Human beings transform not in giant leaps, but in small awakenings, in tiny moments that break the chain of hopelessness. Her boss's whisper became that moment for her, a moment that told her she was allowed to expect more from life, from love, from herself. It reminded her that settling for betrayal is not love. It reminded her that staying in pain is not loyalty. It reminded her that she mattered not just to someone, but in general. And perhaps the most powerful part of this phrase was that it came from someone she did not expect. Support from family or a friend is comforting. But support from a leader, someone outside the intimate circle, carries a different kind of validation. It means your worth is visible even to those who see only small glimpses of your life. It means your value isn't hidden. It is recognized by others, even those who don't know the details of your story. This phrase didn't fix everything, but it did something even more important. It planted a seed of self-respect, a seed of clarity, a seed of courage, and that seed would grow into the transformation she needed. Support is one of the most underestimated forces in human life. We often praise independence, resilience, and inner strength. But we forget that even the strongest people were shaped, uplifted, and carried at some point by someone else's presence, kindness, or belief in them. Strength does not grow in isolation, it grows in connection. And for her, support came at a moment when she felt weakest, shakiest, and most unsure of herself. After discovering the betrayal, she was emotionally shattered. What she needed wasn't a solution, a plan, or a list of steps to fix her life. She needed something much simpler and far more powerful, the sense that she wasn't alone, that someone saw her pain, that someone cared. The support her boss gave her was quiet, gentle, and intentional, but its impact was profound. Support does not always look like dramatic gestures or long conversations. Sometimes it is found in small moments of empathy. The soft tone in someone's voice, the way they pause to check on you, the simple acknowledgement that your feelings are real and valid. And that day, her boss offered all of that without overwhelming her. When a person is hurting, support acts like a stabilizing force. Emotionally, heartbreak is like being thrown into a storm. Everything spins, everything feels unpredictable, and nothing feels safe. But support creates an anchor. It doesn't stop the storm, but it stops the person from being swept away by it. Her boss provided that anchor. She didn't demand explanations or force her to speak. She didn't pepper her with questions that would deepen the wound. Instead, she created a safe space, a brief, quiet moment where compassion replaced chaos. And in that moment, something inside the woman shifted. Pain didn't disappear, but panic softened. Fear loosened its grip. Tears that felt uncontrollable became manageable. This is what support does. It doesn't erase the burden, but it lightens it just enough so the person can breathe again. Support is also transformative because it offers perspective. When someone is betrayed, their world shrinks. The heartbreak becomes so big, so consuming, that it feels like there is no future beyond the pain. The betrayal becomes the lens through which they see themselves, and that lens is distorted and cruel. But when someone else steps in with kindness, it widens that lens. It reminds the hurting person that life is bigger than the betrayal, that they are not defined by the actions of someone who failed them, that they still matter to others, even if one person treated them carelessly. Her boss's support served as a gentle reminder that heartbreak wasn't the end of her identity. It was a painful moment, yes, but it wasn't all she was. Support also creates strength because it gives courage. When people feel alone, they often surrender to hopelessness. They stay in situations that hurt them because they believe they have no one to lean on and no direction to turn. They shrink themselves to fit the pain, telling themselves that suffering is easier than seeking better. But when someone supports you, it becomes easier to choose yourself. Those 3 words, "you deserve better," weren't just validation. They were permission. Permission to consider a future without the person who hurt her. Permission to believe that better love existed. Permission to walk away from what broke her rather than holding on to it out of fear. Support doesn't force change, it empowers it. People often think strength is the ability to carry pain alone, but true strength is often the willingness to let others help you carry it. When she heard her boss's supportive whisper, she realized something important. She didn't have to be alone in her suffering. There was someone willing to stand beside her, even briefly, and that presence made her pain feel less isolating. The human heart is not designed to heal in isolation. Healing accelerates when we are seen, heard, and held, even emotionally, even quietly. Support acts like emotional scaffolding, giving structure to someone who feels like they are collapsing. It gives them something to lean against while they rebuild themselves. Another profound effect of support is that it reduces shame. Being cheated on often brings feelings of embarrassment, humiliation, and insecurity. People blame themselves. They hide not just the pain, but the perceived failure. They worry others will judge them for trusting the wrong person or staying too long. But when someone shows support instead of judgment, it cuts through the shame. It tells the hurting person, your pain is not embarrassing. Your heartbreak is not your fault. Your tears are not weakness. Her boss's support did exactly that. It dismantled the shame before it could grow. Support also strengthens self-worth. Someone standing beside you, even for a moment, shows you that you are worth standing beside. Someone speaking kindness into your pain reminds you that you are worthy of kindness. Someone believing in your value, especially when you doubt it yourself, becomes the proof that helps rebuild confidence. And confidence is a powerful form of strength. Before heartbreak, she was confident in her life, her relationship, and her future. Betrayal shattered that, but support began the process of restoring it. It gave her enough strength to start thinking clearly again, enough strength to stop blaming herself, enough strength to take the first step toward healing. Support doesn't complete the transformation, but it begins it. There comes a moment in every person's life when the noise around them quiets just long enough for a truth, once ignored, once invisible, to finally sink in. For her, that truth was simple yet life-faltering. I am worth more than the way I have been treated. But arriving at that realization wasn't sudden, and it definitely wasn't easy. It was a slow, delicate, and sometimes painful process of peeling away every layer of self-doubt that betrayal had left behind. When someone is cheated on, the wound penetrates deeper than the relationship itself. It doesn't just hurt your heart, it attacks your identity. She began questioning everything. Was I not enough? Did I fail? Was I boring? Did I do something to push him away? These questions carved through her confidence like a knife, leaving her mentally rehearsing scenarios that made her feel small, replaceable, and flawed. And that is precisely the trap betrayal sets, convincing you that someone else's inability to love you properly is somehow your fault. But something unexpected happened that began shifting her perspective. It was a whisper, 5 quiet words from someone who didn't want anything from her, someone who said it not from romance or obligation, but from genuine care. You deserve better than that. At first, she brushed it off. Compliments felt foreign, kindness felt suspicious, and the idea of her own worth felt distant, but the whisper lingered. It echoed in her mind during commutes, in the silence before bed, and in the moments when she caught her reflection and barely recognized the tired eyes staring back. That whisper wasn't just reassurance, it was a challenge to look at herself not through the lens of heartbreak, but through clarity. Slowly, she started rewiring her thoughts. Maybe being cheated on said more about his character than her value. Maybe loyalty was something she offered with honesty, while he offered it with conditions. Maybe love wasn't supposed to make her anxious, suspicious, or doubting her own worth. This shift didn't happen in one emotional breakthrough. It came in moments, quiet victories disguised as ordinary days. It looked like waking up one morning and deciding to eat a real breakfast instead of skipping it, because sadness had stolen her appetite. It looked like unfollowing him on social media, not out of anger, but out of self-protection. It looked like going to work and allowing herself to smile again without feeling guilty for healing. It looked like rediscovering her voice in meetings, speaking with authority that she had slowly forgotten she possessed. The more she reclaimed pieces of herself, the more she realized how much she had given up in that relationship. She had made herself small to keep the peace. She had muted her personality to fit his moods. She had carried the emotional weight for two, believing that love meant sacrificing your comfort so someone else could be comfortable. But reclaiming her power meant reversing all of that. She began recognizing that boundaries were not walls. They were safeguards. They protected her energy, her mental health, and her future. She learned to say no to things that drained her. She learned to say yes to things that made her come alive. She chose friendships that made her feel valued, conversations that challenged her to grow, and environments that made healing possible. Most importantly, she chose herself. It wasn't an arrogant choice. It was a necessary one, because when someone tears down your self-worth, rebuilding it becomes a form of survival. She realized she didn't have to beg for loyalty. She didn't have to convince anyone to treat her with respect. And she definitely didn't have to prove she was worthy of honesty. These were her non-negotiables, not privileges to be earned, but rights to be respected. That single whisper from her boss became a seed, and like any seed, it needed space, time, and light to grow. She nurtured it by surrounding herself with people who reminded her of her strength. She allowed herself to cry when she needed to laugh when she felt like it, and to let go of the version of herself who accepted breadcrumbs in the name of love. And as she grew stronger, something remarkable happened. She stopped viewing the betrayal as a defining moment and started seeing it as a turning point. A painful one, yes, but also a powerful one. It forced her to confront what she had been tolerating. It pushed her to elevate her standards. It opened her eyes to the truth that sometimes rejection is protection in disguise. That sometimes losing someone is simply making space for something healthier, kinder, and far more deserving of her heart. Reclaiming her power wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving him wrong. It wasn't even about proving herself right. It was about breaking free from the belief that she was unworthy of unwavering love. It was about understanding that her value remained intact, even after someone failed to see it, and once she embraced that, everything changed. She walked differently, shoulders back, chin up, energy calm but grounded. She spoke differently, confidently, decisively, with a voice she finally recognized as her own. She dreamed differently, no longer shrinking her ambitions to fit someone else's comfort. She loved differently, deeply, but with boundaries that honored her growth. Reclaiming her worth didn't just give her power back, it made her unstoppable. So today, as we stand here together, I want you to take her story and hold it close, not because it is dramatic, not because it is painful, but because it is universal. Every one of us, at some point in our lives, has accepted less than we deserved, stayed longer than we should have, believed someone else's lies more than our own truth. But her journey reminds us of something powerful. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to want more. And you are allowed to say, I deserve better. If there is someone in your life right now who is dimming your light, lowering your confidence, or making you question your worth, let this be your whisper. Let this moment be the one where you choose yourself again, because healing is not a sign of weakness. Rising is not a sign of arrogance, and knowing your worth, your irreplaceable, unshakable worth, is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. Her boss whispered it. Life reinforced it. And now I'm saying it to you. You deserve better. You always have. You always will. Thank you.